Okay, so to process orders in VendorNet for stock purchase orders, I'm going to walk you through how to do that. One thing you'll want to make sure is if you're using a browser above version 10 and above, you want to go to Help and About, and that'll tell you what version you have. If you have an older version, 9 or later, it won't need to do this. And that'll be to add the compatibility mode. So if you go to Tools, Compatibility View Settings, and add the site in there for versions 10 and above, that'll help. Okay. And since this is an older version, I want to remove that. And the site we're going to go to for training purposes is vntraining.ccsginc.com. Now, on a Windows machine, it is preferred to use Internet Explorer. However, you can use Firefox. On a Mac, the only other supported browser is Firefox. Okay. So for training purposes, we're going to use CF Stock and password vendor. Okay, and when you first log in, you'll see you're waiting to print orders here, and you'll want to print those. Now you will get an email notification you have new orders to print to the email addresses that you've provided us. And you can change those by emailing us at vtg@cornerstonebrands.com. Okay, so to print those, we're going to go to Print near in the upper right or left, and then Print New Orders in the upper right. And that'll give you the click here to print your orders. So you'll click here, and that'll open another tab or window here, and you're seeing it in a side view because it's intended that you're printing to a portrait format. And once you print those out, you just can turn it to the side. Some of the brands you might see that it overlaps partially down here. It'll print just fine. It's just a visual defect. Okay. So assuming you want to print those, you can. Otherwise, we can just close the window, and that's going to bring you back to this home page here. The next step is to acknowledge the order in VendorNet. So you're just going to see here that it's waiting for acknowledgement. So we're going to go to Acknowledge there on the left, and then Review Orders here at the top. And that's going to bring up one of the first orders you have. Now it's going to bring up each individual order here independently. We do recommend going ahead and acknowledging the order. It's not going to hurt anything after you've printed it, and that's going to move it into the ship area. And if there's any modification that the brand makes to the purchase order, it'll move it back into the acknowledgement area. Okay. And to do that, we'll just click Release Order to release the order. And like I said, it'll bring you up to the next PO, and you'll just release order until you get to the end of the pending order list. And that'll be the screen here. And that just lets you know that you've acknowledged all the orders in the site at the time. If you're not going to go through ship, you can do Exit Batch, and that'll get you out of the pending bucket and take you back to the home screen. If you would want to process the ship, you could just go ahead and go to Ship, and you'll get an error message there, and you can just click OK. So for training purposes, the last thing we'll do is process the ASN and print the labels. Now we do recommend waiting about 24 to 48 hours prior to shipping, because it is going to process the ASN at the same time. So we're going to go to Ship here on the left, and then Start Shipping in the upper right where the brown truck's at. And that's going to list the POs in the ship bucket. So we're going to find one here that we're going to process, and to do that, you'll just click on that PO number that you're going to generate. So you're going to do it by PO number. And this is going to go through here, and it's going to create your ASN and build the label at the same time. So the first thing you want to do is put in the number of units you're shipping. If you're doing multiple shipments to get into PO, you can separate that by doing just the number of units you're shipping on that particular purchase order at that time. If you're processing the complete order, an easy way to autofill it is to click on the word quantity here, right above, about halfway down on the green line here. And then ship quantity would also remove that back to 0. So I'm going to process this as if we're shipping the PO complete. And then you'll want to put some kind of tracking number here. Now, if you don't have an actual tracking number when you're processing this, you can put some kind of reference number. You cannot change this after you've processed it, but once you get an accurate actual tracking number, you can email your buyer planner at the brand so they have that. And for training purposes, I'm going to use truck as the tracking number. And then we're going to go to add cases, and that's above the dark green line on the left there, and that's right above the SKU column. So you see a brown box symbol next to it. And that's going to give you a screen that says cases to add here on the right. And the cases to add, that relates to number of boxes or cartons that you're shipping. If you're doing mixed SKU, which we don't do in VendorNet, you can use this to do the number of bags you're going to put into a box, and that way you can put the actual label on the bag, and then on the outside of the carton you'll put the mixed SKU, so the receiving team will know that it's a mixed SKU case. Okay, so the cases to add here on our training site, it's the 2 and the 4 comes from, we have a 25 per case master carton set up, so that's why we're seeing the 2 and the 4. If there isn't a case size set up for your SKUs, it may be blank, and you'll just need to put in here the number of cases or cartons you're shipping based on how you're shipping it. And then we're going to click Explode Refresh above the dark green line on the right there. And that's going to expand your screen, so you're going to see the SSCC lines down below, and that's going to represent the case label again. What you want to do here is visually confirm that the correct quantity per case is there. So for example, on here on this PO, we have 48 for line number 1, so we have one for 25 here, and the other one for 23. Say we're not shipping that way, say we may be shipping a larger quantity in one of those cases and less in another one. For example, say we're shipping 20 in this line here, the second one, and we're sending 28 here, we would just change those numbers to reflect that. And then we're going to click the Explode Refresh, and that's going to change your unallocated column here, and that's going to go to 0, and that's what we're looking for. If by chance it's a greater or lower number there, you want to check the number of units for each case down below for that line, because that means it's the math's off. It's kind of a math check that says the number of units we said we're shipping matches with the total units down below. So we have 0 here, and we're going to go to Process Shipments here at the top next to VendorNet. And that's going to give you the shipping batch recap. And I like to mention that it's going to recap in 2 methods here. So you're going to see each case label, the SKU, and the total quantity out to the right. And then at the bottom, it's going to recap again by SKU and the total units for each SKU that's shipping. And you just want to make sure that you've got the correct number of labels here, because like I said, it is going to process the ASN and generate the labels for you. So if you're expecting, say, 5 labels and you have 1, or if you're expecting 5 labels and you have 100 labels here, you may want to exit batch here at the top so that you can go back through here and modify that. Another way to modify the PO is if you click on the order number here. For example, if you get an error that there's no packages on this shipment, that means that there was no tracking number put in. Okay? So I'm going to say we're going to process this, and to do that we're going to click on Update Shipments here at the top where Process Shipments was, and you'll get an Are you sure was to process this batch, and we're going to click OK. And that's going to open up another screen or another tab here and have the labels there. Now we have 2 options to do this, and it is a setting change on our end, and that's where it's 4 per page, which will be an Avery 5168 label stock, or if it's 1 per page to a thermal barcode printer similar to a Zebra printer, and we can make that change on our side. If you need to and it's set up incorrectly, you can just shoot us an email and we can change that and email you back. Okay. Now when you print these, what you'll want to do is actually change your page setup before you actually print these. And the best setting here, if we go to File, Page Setup, is change your margins to a 0.5. You want to unselect Enable Shrink to Fit, and you want to change the headers and footers to empty, and that way it'll put it on the page correctly. And then we'll click OK. And then what you want to do before you actually print is to do a print preview, and that'll kind of line it up on the screen here. If you see that it's kind of overlapping on the screen, you may want to adjust your page setup again, and that you can do it from right here from the fourth icon in, and you can just change the right here to a 0.4, and that should help. And you may even need to change the top and the bottom to a 0.4 to get them to line up just correctly. Now on a Mac, the page setup in Firefox is kind of difficult to get to work, so what you may need to do is, instead of that, change your percentage here to a custom percentage and change it to somewhere between a 90 and a 98% to get them to line up correctly. Okay. Assuming everything's correct, you'll just do file print that on the correct paper, and that's pretty much it. That will send your ASN in for you automatically behind the scenes. We do not recommend using the plain paper and taping it on. That doesn't go very well, and can apply chargebacks if it's not able to be scanned on our distribution center. And the last thing to cover on the stock portion is that we do not invoice in VendorNet. So to invoice, you'll want to go through your buyer and planner to check how they do that. I believe they mail or email that in. Okay. Now the PO will always be in VendorNet, and for example, if you didn't get that to pop up, what you'll want to do is go through what's a reprint process, and that'll be in the documentation we send you. And if you have any questions, you can just shoot us an email, and we're happy to answer that.